What's going on, guys? Alright, so today on Project Coupe, we're going to be working on the dual sync, getting that all set up and get all fired up. Originally made a video on the dual sync originally, but on the last video, on the first startup, I made a few issues on it, so well, issues, but made a few mistakes. Made a video already, but I decided I'm gonna go ahead and just redo the video after got the car up and figured out what mistakes on it. I can show you the way I done it and it works great, so let's do this. Alright guys, so got the distributor pulled out. What we need to do is we need to get our number one cylinder on the compression side, or compression stroke, and we need it at 50 degrees before top dead center. So what I'm going to do is, or what you need to do is, you need to pull the number one spark plug out, what you got right there. You need to have that pulled out. You need to get you a big socket, put on the crank, and you want to turn it over till you get on the compression stroke. So when you turn it over slowly, just have your finger over the spark plug hole. You should start feeling air come out. And once you feel that and hear it, you're on the compression stroke. So while you're doing that, you need to watch your balancer. The balancer I have here has a 50 degrees mark on it, and not all balancers do. So there's instructions Holley has based on what size balancer you have. You have to get a tape measure and mark your 50 degree mark. But luckily the balancer I have has a 50 degree mark on it, so it should make this job easy. So like I said, what we need to do is, before we do anything else, we have to get 50 degrees before top dead center on the compression stroke. You can, because if you don't do it right, you actually, if you don't feel air come out on once you hit 50, you're on the exhaust stroke. You need to get on the intake or compression stroke in order for this thing to work, because it'd be 180 off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my socket and it's a torque wrench, really, just so I can get some leverage on it. We're gonna turn the engine over till we get on a 50 degrees. So let me get my light so I can see what I'm doing. So I'll just stick my torque wrench in here. Let's see where we're at. So right now it feels like we're on the exhaust stroke. Just gonna keep turning it. Seeing if you can hear that or not. If I turn my camera the other way. I can feel it. We're getting on the exhaust stroke. If you can hear that. Right, so that's a good sign. So we're just going to keep turning till I see 50 degrees on the balancer. Alright, so I'm at 50 degrees. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm right at 50 degrees. Alright, so now we got all that set. We can put the dual sync distributor back in and we can start setting that up. Alright, so we got our dual sync here. Per instructions, if it's a new build and it's going to be sitting for a while, put you some semi-lube on the gears. The kit does come with some oil, but I have no clue what to do with it. But I originally just stuck some semi-lube on it since this engine hasn't been started in a few months. But it has now, so it's got oil on the gear now. So we're just going to drop it back in. If you do plan on just dropping this in and start right up, you can just put oil right on into the gear. But since it's already been ran and everything, we plan on starting it up tomorrow. I'm just going to drop it in as is. Alright, so we got the dual sync in. Make sure you put the little rubber seal that goes on the very bottom. Help seal it between the block and the distributor. Keep oil from coming out. When you put the dual sync down, you want to make sure this cap is right by the cam, crank, and crank sensor. I believe that's what it is right there. So you want to make sure you're very, very close to these, because you will have to align your cap with the sensor there. And from now, keep in mind, you do not want to rotate the engine. You want to keep it as it is. Keep it on 50 degrees before top dead center. So now we'll need to plug the dual sync back in to the Holley, and we're going to apply power to it, and we're going to align the dual sync. Alright, so we're just going to apply power. And on top of the dual sync, you should have two lights. But we only got one light right now. Alright, so you should have two lights on. You should have your cam and your crank light on. So what we want to do is the 351 or 302, well, the engine spins the distributor spins counterclockwise. So we're going to be turning our dual sync or our distributor here counterclockwise. So we're going to turn it till our crank light turns off, which you should be past this sensor here when you do that. So just going to turn it till it turns off. Alright, so you saw there the light turned off on the crank. So now we're going to turn it clockwise until that light comes back on. Alright, so right now it's set up for the first fire. You can put your hold down in back for your distributor. You will still need to set timing and everything, but that'll be the next step. Another thing I want to point out too is, see where your pointer is? That is going to be your number one plug. So don't look at my cap. So it's more likely going to have to be changed. But right now, that is going to be your number one plug. And keep in mind, this distributor turns counterclockwise. So if you need to, just pull up the diagram, your firing order, and just put your plugs as they need to be. Alright, so you go ahead and kill power to the car. You can also put your number one spark plug back in, and put your plug wire back on. And from there, you want to make sure your cap, like I said, your cap needs to be set to the firing order. And keep in mind, this is right here is on your cap will be number one. This cap one goes on one way. You can't turn it either way. It only goes on this distributor on one way. Just keep in mind. You can see it's kind of got some alignment dials here. and the other side doesn't have it. And it's got a revision here. So the dowels will go on this side of the cap and won't work on this side. So just keep that in mind. The cap only goes on one way. You cannot flop or flip it. So just mark on your cap which is going to be number 1, and from there, and put your plug wires on accordingly. Alright, so I got the cap on. It's got 2 screws to hold it down. Like I said, the cap only goes on one way. And I have my number 1 plug wire on. And from there, I'm just going to go counterclockwise. Put my plug wires back on. Got my little cheat sheet here. If you want to pause it to get an idea what wire goes where. So for example, on this cap here, I got the number 1 spark plug. So you got 1, 3, 7, 2, 6, 5, 4, 8, and back to 1. So I'm just going to put my plug wires back on like so, and we can move on to the next step. Alright, so next morning now we're going to do set the timing, but first we need to make sure our settings are correct in the Terminator X. So with your key off, what we want to do is just load up your tune. The next, you want to go to your EFI little icon there and go to ignition parameters. I've already set mine up, so if you want to, you can just copy what I have. It's basically what the instructions call for. So if you have a Ford kit, you're just going to be on the Ford TFI 8-cylinder sequential. So go to custom, configure. So on the crank sensor, you'll select the 1-pulse fire sensor type, digital rising, inductive delay. It's at 100 U-second, and your ignition reference angle is 50 degrees. So that's why we need to set the distributor, or not the distributor, but the balancer at 50 degrees. Cam sensor, single pulse, digital falling. We're using an MSD box. Output setup, I have it set on points. Output adjustable dwell, and that's on 2 millisecond. Once you get all that set up, go to back, turn ignition on, write that to the ECU. Then once you do that, keep your ignition on. You want to go over here. It's got like a refresh, you want to call it. Go to, gotta have the key on first, but you want to go to enable static timing check. So apply power to the car. Gonna kick on the ignition. We'll go to USB link. We'll get the software to talk to the ECU. Now I should be able to set our static. Holley suggests 15 degrees. I'm gonna set mine to 20, only because it's easy for me to set or see on the bouncer. As you can see there, once you input your static timing, hit set. Keep in mind, if you turn the key off and turn back on, this will reset. So you will have to go back in and set this value and hit set again every time if you turn the ignition off and turn back on. So we got all that set. now we are ready to check timing. You can keep your distributor loose. Just give you enough, just tighten down just enough so you can turn it until you hit. In my case, we're going to hit 20 degrees on the bouncer. That's what we have it set up in the Holley software. Once we hit 20 degrees on the bouncer, we'll tighten our distributor down and we'll be good. That'd be one of the steps. We still have to do another step. We need to raise the engine RPM up to about 3,500, 4 grand, and see if it still shows 20 degrees on the balancer. If it doesn't, we will need to adjust the inductive setting. Oh, we'll close that out real quick. We'll disconnect from the ECU. Go to configure. This setting right here, this setting here is what we'll be adjusting if it's off. So we'll see if we need to adjust that or not. We won't know until we get the engine running and all the timing is set. But first, we're going to get our timing set at idle. Get connected again. Close. Enable static timing. Oh, went to the wrong thing. My bad. Okay, you see it's still there because I have it turning. I have it cycling ignition. I'm gonna hit set again, so it's already set. So now we're gonna start the engine, and we'll go ahead and set our timing real quick. Oh, I forgot to mention. Before we set our timing, got the injector plug disconnected. First we need to do is I need to see it picks up crank signal. I forgot that step. So you will need to do that first before you try to set timing. I'm going to close that. I'm also going to pull this. This goes to the coil. I'm not going to need that yet. I'm going to pull up this, and we're going to look up. Right now I'm going to look under our idle tuning. It says RPM and it says stall. So I want to make sure that the ECU sees the dual sync. So we're just going to crank it over until we see it. We should see a RPM. It'd be small. It'll be like 100-200 RPMs. Alright, so I saw it. It is seeing the dual sync. So now we can get to setting the timing. Alright, so I got my coil plugged back in and got the injectors plugged back in. So now we're fixing to start it. We got to turn the key back on. Remember I said that you're going to have to reset your static timing because we cycled the ignition. So once we kick the ignition back on, we have to set our static timing again. So we're just going to kick the ignition on. Connect to the ECU. Enable static timing check. It's still there, so it's funny. So we'll just hit set. Now it shows the static timing has been set. So now we're going to crank it over until the car starts. And we're also going to have our distributor or our timing line at 0 degrees. So we're just going to hit 20 on the bouncer. Alright, you just saw there I set the static timing with it at idle right around 1000 RPMs, hit 20 degrees onto the balancer, and once I got that done, I revved the engine up to about 3,500 RPMs, close to 4 grand, and it was off just a little bit. So what I did is kill the engine. Well, I guess you don't have to kill the engine, just disconnect from the ECU, go back into your ignition parameters, configure your inductive delay. Default's at 100. Well, the value I put in from the Holley suggests you put in 100, and I raise it to 120. Oh, they say raise it by 20s, and I raise it to 120, and that corrected it and never advanced or retard. With my case, the timing was retarding some, so I increased it. So if it's advancing, you'll lower it. So now it is officially set. It'll automatically go back to the table. It ain't like the micro squirt top systems. You have to tell it go back to the table. It'll automatically go back to the table now. And we'll get all this disconnected. Well, I guess we can check the timing and see if it's actually using the table. And we'll be officially done with setting the timing here on the Dual Sync. Alright guys, so just a little update here. I'm actually kind of starting over. I made a few mistakes. So let me show you the mistakes I made. I've already showed y'all earlier in the video, but I'm going to show you again. So I made a mistake. The sensor type, it should be digital falling. I had on digital rising for some odd reason. I had on digital rising, but it should be on digital falling. And the output setup, that's correct. The points output adjustable dwell, but the dwell time should be 2 milliseconds. For some reason I had it 1.5. I'm not 100% sure why it went to that. Thought I had changed to 2.0, but it is what it is. So I'm actually fixing to retime the car. It's kind of weird. You blip the throttle, it had like a backfire to it, so I knew something wasn't up. At first I thought maybe was the launch control. It was enabled, but it's set up a little bit different in this car now. It requires a 12 volt instead of a ground, so I thought maybe that was causing an issue, but that's not the case. Then I went over through my settings again, then that's when I caught the sensor type on the crank was wrong, and output setup, the dwell time was wrong too. So we're going to try all those new settings and we'll see how it does. Alright guys, so this is my final settings I use for the Dual Sync. Everything's basically the same except for a crank, the sensor type for the crank sensor. I had on the wrong setting. Should be on digital falling, not digital rising. Don't know how I messed that up, but got that fixed. And dwell time 1.5, kept that the same. And changed the inductive delay to 140. And everything matches good between the idle and 4,000, close to 4,000 RPMs. Timing stayed dead on 20 degrees. Once you're done, just lock down your distributor, check your timing again, make sure it's where it is, where it needs to be, and basically that is it guys. So I'm gonna wrap up this video here. hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it helped you out do the dual sync install. Highly suggest it. Get rid of the TFI. Won't have to worry about heat soak issues with that again. If you're running, you know, a Holley, Terminator X, or anything along the lines of those ECUs, the micro squirt, mega squirt, it's a great upgrade. Get rid of that TFI module. They're prone to just failing, leave you stranded. Plus you get, you know, timing is a lot more precise with this, and right off the battery, you know, it's idle a lot better. Throttle response is better, but the real true test will be, you know, get back on a dyno, see we see any improvements, which I think we should. We should have a lot hotter spark than before. We got the MSD inside of the car on the passenger side, and but yeah. But guys, I'm gonna wrap up this video here. Like I said, hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment down below, and until next time, I will see y'all later.